Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snider. That song is called Baptism of Fire. It's off the Living Water CD, and I want to give special recognition to my friend Dr. Mark Humbert. Did a fine job on that song as well. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Billy Meyer case this evening and the book, The Might of the Thoughts, but I'm also going to bring my guest, Solaris BlueRaven, on, who also has a few topics she wants to discuss this evening. Solaris, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We've had a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Memorial Day, and we're having some high winds come through. Looks like a storm might be coming through, but we've had such a beautiful weekend. You can't really complain. I kind of like to see a little rain after you've had 2 or 3 days of sunshine anyway.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of rain, a lot of electrical storms, but that's okay too. Yeah, thanks for having me join you tonight.
Oh, hey, how are things on dark matter these days?
Dark matter is great. I love hyperspace. Every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Yes, doing fine. Thank you. I'm booked until August with guests.
Say what? Say that again.
I said I'm booked until August, like mid-August with guests. It's fast forward over there.
That's excellent. That's excellent. You book way ahead of time.
Yeah, it just kind of rolls, you know. Every time I think I might take a break and just not do radio anymore, I start getting booked with guests, you know. So
it's weird. I try to do that ahead of time, and sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll book a couple months ahead, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way for one reason or another. I tend to get down to the wire sometimes. I felt really fortunate on Revolution Radio. The past 3 or 4 shows, I've really had some good guests.
Oh, yeah, stellar. Yep, absolutely.
Did you like Dr. Richard Souter last night?
Yeah, I thought he was wonderful. Absolutely.
It was interesting that he was talking about ayahuasca, because we didn't plan on talking about that at all.
I thought that was very, very interesting when he touched on that. And of course, I haven't tried it, so I think if I was in Peru under the circumstances, I might. I don't know. What do you think, Mark? Would you try it?
Well, Joe Rogan, he talks about that, and he's used it several times. Now, for me, it's kind of weird because, I mean, I can't imagine purposely taking something that's going to make you vomit, and vomit intensely, and have diarrhea at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I'm wondering what the concoction really consists of. Huh? It reminds me of that movie Altered States. Was it Altered States? I believe it was. Yeah, with William Hurt.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, you need to see it. It's an old one, but yeah, you might want to check it out. Altered States. Yep.
Was it black and white?
No, it's in color. It was like I can't remember what year it was, 70s or 80s. Don't quote me on that, but you can look it up. Google it. Go to YouTube. It's Altered States.
Was it about like drug usage or what?
Well, it was about, I believe there was that scientist who did the experimentation with float tanks and psychedelics and something connected to ayahuasca or something very similar. Anyways, it's a storyline pertaining to that, and then, of course, the mutation involved. So you might find it very interesting. Kind of a classic.
You know what's interesting about this whole ayahuasca thing is Joe Rogan talks about it, and Graham Hancock talks about it, and it seems to the people that use it, it seems to change them in kind of a profound way. And most of the people that I've heard talk about it said it was a positive thing, like it increased their awareness somehow. Now, I don't know how that works. I still don't think I'm ever going to do it.
Well, I doubt I will either. You know, I think what it does is, in my opinion, and I obviously don't know much about it, but I think it opens up the DNA and activates the DNA to some degree. And when that happens, when people get their DNA activated, all sorts of multidimensional design work, geometric light languages connect in, whether it's through dialogue, visuals, or whatever. It's very fascinating on that level, on the multidimensional level. So I suspect they're piercing different veils that are connected to these aspects of consciousness, like little fractals. But like I said, I've never tried it, so I don't know. But I do know LSD does this similar thing. It opens up the DNA. It doesn't necessarily activate it, but it does open it up. And, of course, they used a lot of mind control with that back in the day. So CIA did anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how, I guess, ayahuasca is a natural thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for what it sounds like, it's also an intelligent. Did he call it an intelligent plant?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Well,
other people that I've heard talk about ayahuasca, they refer to it almost like it's another entity or another person. Like the ayahuasca told me this, the ayahuasca showed me that, which seems really strange to me.
Well, when you think about it, Mark, yeah, it is very interesting. When you think about it, when you're tuned into nature, say the trees, elementals, different aspects of consciousness, which takes on a different formula. I mean, we're all connected to some degree, but there's a different being, there's a different life form. So perhaps that's what they're accessing is the life behind that design work. Just like if some people say they communicate with trees or animals, I mean, it's the animal kingdom. It's the same thing. There's a language, there's an interpolation of data that's connecting to a different form of consciousness, but we're still connected on a higher scale. At least that's the way I see it. So I think it's very fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always talk about how important it is to be in nature, be connected to nature, to take the time to do that. I'm really fortunate in that I can just walk out my sliding glass door and sit on my back porch and just, watch nature, watch deer, watch wild turkeys, watch my cats playing around back there, and watch the sun come up and listen to the birds. And I think that's what we're losing. That's what we're destroying our planet. We're killing our world, and we're doing a lot of it unconsciously because we're just allowing our populations to grow wildly, and we're not managing the planet at all. And we're so focused on profit, we don't really think about. And I think part of the problem really stems because most of our religions don't understand the cyclical nature of life and the fact that we have to take responsibility because death really isn't an escape. It's only a temporary escape.
It's a continuation. Basically, what you don't fulfill here, you have to go to the next level and fulfill. Doesn't necessarily mean reincarnation, and that's another thing. But I think you're spot on. Yeah, we're losing this country. Obviously, America. I love America dearly, but it's going into a very bad spiral. And of course, we have on a global scale. Yeah, there's so much contamination and so many problems. I do look at it as a self-destruct, and we are overpopulated. I agree with you. And I think that, I also live up away from people, and I enjoy and appreciate every moment I have when I can have quiet time looking at mountains and observing nature and being around the components of what this planet is about. I think that's huge. It's big. To be part of that.
Did you want to talk, you said you wanted to talk a little bit about psychic vampires?
No, not a whole lot. I just thought maybe it was a subject of discussion, but we can talk into Billy Meyer and everything else you want to. This is your show, obviously. I was just looking at in the spectrum of thinking. A lot of people who are tuned into radio, whether it's mainstream or alternative, have a psychic, almost like they're parasitically, psychically attached emotionally to what's been going on. It's like a pacifier to them. And I think that there's a lot of energy sucks going on where people are becoming emotionally addicted to bad media. And whether that's through mainstream television or mainstream programming or even some alternative media where there's so much disinformation and everything is so watered down and so not bright. So I think that I just wanted to kind of touch on that. And I'm sure you've picked up on the fact that there are people who literally rely on energetically feeding off of data. And a lot of that data is not accurate. And I think that's a problem that I'm seeing in America, especially with people who are stuck to their iPhones and stuck to texting. They can't break away from the computer. They're so addicted to that energy, and then there is no energy in it. It's almost like a vacuum. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. I think a lot of electrical stuff is bad for you. I mean, it's good to get away from it. That's why I've tried to spend a lot of time outside and get negative ions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I just noticed it, and that's one thing I do appreciate about your show. It's very positive. There are a lot of good things about it, and I love listening. You have great guests.
Well, let me, speaking of very positive, let me read you something here. This is page in page 294 on my particular version of Might of the Thoughts, it says, the human being must consider it his/her duty to enjoy the abundance of his or her life. If it is a kind of life which is righteous and evolutive, however, each human being must create this abundance himself/herself. Thus, everyone must contribute his/her own part to that in order to be provided for in the best way. But in order to achieve the abundance of the provision, the creation and maintenance of a neutral, positive, equalized attitude is necessary. Consequently, it must never be forgotten that a gloomy attitude constantly chases away the abundance and the prosperity. Abundance and prosperity do not like any human being who is grim and inhospitable and otherwise of a destructive kind. Therefore, prosperity and abundance do not arise where the human being's consciousness is full of shades of doubt and hate and unfairness and criminal, terrible things. So we attract to us the abundance and prosperity by a neutral, positive thought process. And that's one
absolutely.
thing. And you talk about being neutral. I was real impressed when you brought that up the other day.
Well, I understand what it takes to have a positive lifestyle, and of course I also understand the dark side of covert technology, as we've talked about in the past. So I do understand how thoughts are powerful, and that's why when they use artificial telepathy or misuse dialogue through a transmission of psychotronic harassment or covert harassment, you can see how it would affect somebody's psyche and consciousness and state of mind and well-being, which is a huge thing because the whole idea on this planet is really about expanding in consciousness and accepting your avatar design, which is multidimensional and infinite. And I think that with the misuse of technology, which I touch on quite a bit, it's really trying to stop that, which means we have to do something to counter and negate anything that's going to try to scramble one's beautiful celestial mind. I think the mind and the brain and the supercomputer design, what we have been gifted with in our suits, is phenomenally powerful, Mark. You have cellular memory. You have access to your past lifetimes, future lifetimes, multidimensional timelines. And it's beautiful once people access that, and nobody has the right to interfere. So I do see people getting kind of lost along the way here on this planet, and I guess maybe that's why we're in the media, just try to be here for everybody to kind of cue them to reawaken themselves.
One of the things that's mentioned in the Might of the Thoughts book here is how our thoughts are contagious. Not only our thoughts, but our behaviors. And so if we can put out positive energy, or neutral positive energy, which is even better, then that can help other people keep their thoughts neutral positive and keep their good attitude and good behaviors. Because another passage here in the book talks, and it says, this is really interesting. I was reading this on the back porch a couple weeks ago, and I had to read it over and over again. And that's one thing about Billy's books is, it's crazy. I'll spend a week on a single page trying to really absorb what it's saying, but it said that lower thoughts lead to lower feelings lead to lower habits, and then lower habits lead to lower circumstances. And of course, lower circumstances in life can involve suffering. And then it mentioned some of the lower circumstances. They could be hate, grief, sorrow, alcoholism, things like that. And then it went on to say that when your thoughts become extremely destructive and extremely negative, they can run unconsciously and automatically. So you can have these lower thoughts, lower feelings, and that's where the habits and the addictions pick up. And people are even doing things that they don't even want to do.
Right, yeah, I agree with you. That's the addiction cycle. Yeah, people get addicted to negative energy, or what I consider to be non-productive energy. And, of course, that's a downward spiral. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. That's spot on as well. And, of course, it's about taking responsibility for your own thoughts. And this is why meditation is really good, and doing some kind of a prayer or something, affirmation, which clears out the debris. Because people do they get gunked up, energetically speaking, on the lower astral plane, before you go to bed at night. I mean, I don't know about you, but if your dreams are scrambled and you're getting a lot of weirdness, chances are you need to clear. And I think most people are they're pretty much up to speed on that there's something afoot, because we're like antennas. We're picking up on everything plus our own thoughts. So that's quite a bit.
I don't know if you agree with this or disagree with this. Another thing I read in the Might of Thoughts book here that I was talking about, I think it was yesterday, it talks about beliefs being hypnotic. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, have you ever noticed that some of the real charismatic churches, the way it's almost like a hypnotic effect?
Right. Well, I think they psych themselves into an altered space of consciousness. I mean, if you do an affirmation, it doesn't matter what you're saying. To some degree, you're going to go into an altered space of consciousness, a mantra, any kind of mantra. But if you're on the path of spirit and you're using the right mantra or the right affirmation, then obviously it raises your vibratory rate and you escape the illusions. I think that's part of it, is that you have people who are in, whatever religion they're in, that are literally stuck in these false matrices where they have they do whatever it is to get themselves psyched into that state of consciousness, but it's not the right state of consciousness, even though it may feel good to them. That's a problem. It's like a drug. Oh, it might feel good to you, but it's not where you're supposed to be. So I see that a lot, and I see that a lot in what you were talking about. I think you sent me a link to some of those things with these really wild religious fanatics, and man, it's like, yeah, they're just totally, they're gone. They're not even connected to the full light universe. I mean, I don't know where they are, but they're like on a trip to nowhere,
They make a lot of money doing this stuff. I got some clips. Maybe I'll play some of these clips later.
Good for a laugh.
Oh, they are, and they're kind of sad too, but they're good for a laugh. But in that same passage, it was also saying that beliefs can have a very hypnotic effect. And also, now this is just Billy. I'm not saying you or anyone else has to agree with this, but he is saying that sometimes belief can lead to illogic. And I'll give you an example of what he may be talking about here. One form of logic is deductive reasoning. And with deductive reasoning, you'll say if A, then B, okay? So I'll give you a simple example. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So that's just a way of thinking through a problem. You know what I'm saying? Thinking through a problem.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Where
without using consciousness.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. With belief, a lot of times belief shuts down our thought processes. It doesn't have to. I'm not saying it has to. But a lot of times I think that can happen.
Mm-hmm. I think you're spot on. Well, people, they'll read something and, yeah, it's just like what you're saying. But that's, I don't want to say that's analytical. I mean, but there's a side to us that actually knows all, sees all through the full light Akashic. We understand the language and how to decode the lives of mankind, so to speak. So when you're reading a book, when you're reading something that's supposed to be historical, you'll know intuitively that, wait a minute, this isn't right. You just get that feeling. You understand on a higher level of consciousness that the data isn't correct. And I think that's where consciousness comes in. So I love Billy Meyer's material. I really resonate with a lot of what he communicates. I think it's very much in alignment with what's going on in the universe, in the multiverse. But, yeah, I think mankind is really, really doing a disservice to himself by some of his own information and how he's gone out of his way to step on everybody else to control, manipulate through the misuse of information.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is a lot of misuse of information, especially today. And another thing it was saying here, and I've noticed my own self doing this, like if my thoughts get out of balance, well, let me read what it says here, and then we can talk about it. It says, lower thoughts form lower feelings, lower habits, and lower circumstances, such as alcoholism, hate, affliction, resentment, sorrow, grief, bitterness, errors of judgment, and so forth, and many kinds of suffering. If one's thoughts are destructive, they crystallize into confusing and exhausting habits and circumstances. And I've noticed that with myself is when my thoughts get negative like this, that I'll notice that I'm a little confused, and that can lead to exhaustion. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I have.
Right, no, it's the same thing. It's also when you're around a lot of like what I call toxic people, energetic parasites. They pull you down and they make you sleepy. I mean, I know everybody out there listening has probably come across somebody like that, you know, where they just drain you energetically and they don't even mean to, but they're so negative or they're just so into the false matrix that they can pull you down. Yeah, Mark, I totally understand that, and that's why it's so important to raise your vibratory rate and also move the energy out if you're getting stuck energetically. We have to breathe. We have to push the energy and move that energy. Working out, training, going for a walk in nature, singing, toning, music, which you do. All these beautiful things that we have for outlets are really, really tuning us back into nature, and also being part and communicating with nature like what you were talking about earlier is really big, too, to reset the battery.
I hear you. That's so true. And that is very true. You know, even I think music does help. Music, meditation, take some time, walk in the woods, get outside, and all these things can help with our thoughts, I do believe. And we're going to talk about Billy Meyer, aren't we, in June sometime on your radio show?
Yeah, I can't wait. You're going to be back on my show on Hyperspace. You're going to come on June 30th. So, yeah, that's Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 2 hours on Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. That'd be great, Mark.
Who have you had on recently on Revolution Radio?
Oh, I've had all sorts of people. Well, over at Hyperspace, I've had Barbara DeLong, Linda Zimmerman, Cheryl Costa. She's phenomenal. All these women are fantastic. Joe Montalvo is going to be on tomorrow on Hyperspace. And I've had some other people on. I forget my other people on Raven started. I go like Nancy Hopkins, Eric Abramson, Dr. Richard L. Miller, Lori Moon Boggs was on, James Bartley. So I've got Henry coming down on the show on June 13th again. So hopefully he says he's going to be out on his boat. So hopefully
who was that?
Be okay. Henry Kroll, your buddy.
Henry?
Henry Kroll. Yeah.
You're going to have Henry on the show again?
Yeah, well, he's going back. He likes to talk. You know, he has a lot of information. But June 13th, he supposedly is going to be back, providing he has good signal and all that good stuff from. I guess he's going to be on his boat. So
he's going to be calling you from his boat in Alaska.
Yeah, we'll see on the seas wherever he is. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Right? He's a great guy. That was one you turned me on to. So thank you.
You know, he was, I think, my first guest ever.
Really?
Yeah.
I like him. I think he's a wonderful being. He's very advanced. He's very sharp.
He is, man. I'm telling you, when he gets going, he's really... Right.
I mean, some of it sounds like, whoa, what is he talking about? But then you start breaking it down later on, and you're like, wait a minute, this guy really, really is sharp. So it's quite interesting. Mm-hmm.
He is. Yeah. You know, I think he should have been like a professor or something.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, you know, I noticed that the most scholarly type people are usually people who don't go to these mainstream colleges for very long. I mean, it's always the ones who have the worldly experience, and I'm also self-taught with reading and finding the right information to read and absorb. That's what I've noticed anyway. So just interviewing people.
There's a guitarist in Columbus. I think he's one of the greatest guitarists in the world. He really, really is. And to me, he looks like a physics professor, really. And, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I don't know how much formal training of any kind he's had. He's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, to me, it sounds like cellular memory. And once again, we're talking about the Akashic records. We're talking about expanded in consciousness because we contain all the data. If we would just access that internally, that's why it's so important to go within to get the answers, because we have the answers. And then, of course, unifying those with the full light universe, we come into amplification of data. I mean, in my opinion, I believe that's really the way to go. You can't go by other people's word of mouth. And even if it's in a book that's been printed, you have to go within and actually know. I mean, I know you understand this language. I mean, you go to certain areas, you understand immediately what's going on through a consciousness level. It's without words sometimes. Sometimes it's without pictures. It's just a frequency.
You know, when you were talking there, it made me think of what the Meyer information talks about as it talks about the universal consciousness. It doesn't use the term God. It talks about the universal consciousness, and that in the universe there are storage banks of information, and including there are also planetary storage banks of information. And there's a verse, and I think it's in the Goblet of Truth, that says the creation wants to come into harmonious concord with all people, all flora, all fauna, the entire world, the entire universe. And harmonious concord, to come into harmonious concord means to fit together. So this universe, the universal consciousness, it radiates love. That's what the Maya material explains. It radiates love, but now this is what they say, and I try not to be, I always try to not to push this information on people. I just try to put it out there and let them evaluate it. But they say the universal consciousness, it doesn't even really have a personality in the way we think of a personality. But it radiates love, and the analogy that I draw is that the sun radiates light.
Right, yeah. No, I believe that.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily radiate light with the intention of helping you and I, but it radiates light because that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? That's what it does. And that's kind of the way the universal consciousness works. It radiates love. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're right on. I mean, once again, it's about consciousness, and there is I don't believe there's emotional content behind that at all. It's just a form of energy and transmission, but the transmission is so pure and so high in frequency that it emulates love, unconditional love, and I do know that's what we are at the soul level. On the spiritual level, we are unconditionally loved too. So once we start tuning into that frequency, we come into resonance with the full light universe. You know what came to mind today when I was just kind of wandering around the yard? I was thinking, of our beautiful quote-unquote Stargate sun out there and the illusion of suns, and we have so many. But when you think about that sun, and think about the other beings that were here before man that saw or were experiencing the same transmission of the sun, maybe a little bit different, it's really amazing to me when we look at things in the cosmos and we connect with the cosmos. We're not the only ones. It's really just not about us. And I think sometimes mankind thinks it's all about mankind. It's really not. It's about consciousness, but it's about who was here before that. You look at the monolithic sites and all these beautiful big designs. I mean, and you have to ask yourself, what were they seeing before these cataclysmic events, of course, that they're quoting beyond, 10,000 years ago. So I don't know. I just start looking at that, and I think to myself, it's a big multiverse out there, and it's a cosmic neighborhood, and we need to step up and ascend into it.
Yeah, we do. We do. We need to grow up, don't we?
Oh, totally. Well, I know that there are beings like us and your listeners who are up to speed, who are ascending in consciousness, but man, so many are so not, and it's unfortunate because surely there are good souls here. There are people who have embodiments that deep down they're good people. They're just not understanding, or maybe they're not processing the bigger scenery. And I really truly believe that they need to do that. They need to get up to speed to some degree on so many different levels. They need to kind of set aside this deception game and the distraction, that we participate with, even sometimes not even by our own choosing each day.
Well, I thought it was interesting what you said, and I think you said something along these lines, that when we were talking about the universal consciousness radiating love, and I think you said something about it not being an emotional thing. Was that the word you used?
Yeah, I said, well, basically it doesn't strike me as emotional content, meaning there's no emotional intent behind it. It's just about pure energy, pure love, pure frequency. And I think it gets interpolated as love and light and healing and energy and consciousness, higher consciousness. That's my interpolation of it anyway. It's a beautiful, beautiful transmission.
Yeah, I think that's pretty darn close. He says in one of his books, he says the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation. And it also talks about in his information that love is the foundational creational natural law. And it says here in the book, The Might of the Thoughts, how we say live and let live, but really what we should be doing is live and help live, which I thought was really neat. And he also talks about love as affective love versus effective love. Affective love being the love that is more emotional, more kind of romantic, unstable love, Where effective love, and he puts it a very unusual way, he says, effective love is wisdom-conditioned love. It's recognizing that you coexist with all of nature. And that is a very profound thing. I don't think I've completely wrapped my mind around totally, completely. But
Right.
it also says it along these lines. It says every tiny plant, every tiny animal in creation fulfills its purpose in creation, and that love is the highest principle in creation. But, we've almost made love a dirty word.
Totally. Well, I don't think people understand the meaning of the word, Mark. It's just like they say it so nonchalant these days. Have you noticed that when people say love, it's like there's nothing behind it. There's no soul content there. There's nothing there. That's why I have a hard time with that sometimes when people talk about quote unquote love.
Well, it's all emotional. You know what I'm saying? It's all
right.
It's
or
kind of
addiction.
Addiction. Now that's an interesting.
Well, you think about it, people sometimes they're connected to love, the word love, or the relationship through addiction issues, and not necessarily the real love that's involved behind it all. And that goes for anything, by the way. But I do see that it's a program just like anything else. But I do think that we need to ride a bigger wave when it comes to what love really means, and how that appeals.
I think that's so true. Anyway, with Billy's books, it's almost like with this book, The Might of the Thoughts, I could probably spend the rest of my life on this one book.
That's probably good, though. I mean, in a way, it's meditative, and each one teaches something different. I mean, it's not like it strikes me as one of those materials where you read it and then it changes the next day. It's a different frequency, and it's taking you to different levels, opposed to just being linear. That's the way his work strikes me anyway, just by reading it. So it's more multidimensional versus a linear, which you get more out of it each time you reread it, in other words.
Oh, I do. So much. I had a friend come over today. He plays the wood flute, and we've been experimenting, performing together. And sometimes we have a conga player that comes over and joins us as well. But ironically, he is an expert in the German language. So I showed him Billy's book here, and he started reading. Because whenever you have one of the Meyer books, you have the German on the page on the left. Like I'm looking at page 207 here. It's all German. And on the right is the translation into English. And he was reading the German fluently. And it was just kind of interesting the way, people come into your life. And it almost seems like there's some pre-meditation or preordination about it.
Right. And it's what you're putting out to the universe, too. You're putting that out to the ethers and the universe. And, of course, people who are in resonance to some degree will show up, whether it's through music. And, of course, the music inspires in other directions. I don't believe in coincidence at all, as you know, and I think many people don't believe in coincidence. There's just no such thing. It's synchronicity, but a lot, and resonance and osmosis and all that other good stuff.
You're right, because you're putting out an energy, aren't you? And then
right. Yeah, you're putting it out to the universe. I mean, how many times have we said that? Put it out to the universe, and of course, it's ebb and flow. When you work with the universe, it's always ebb and flow. And of course, as you progress on a spiritual level, you're going to attract people who vibrate the same way you do. I mean, that's usually how it works, whether it's through music or education or consciousness. And I've noticed that. Look at the groups we roll with. I mean, I'm kind of standoffish energetically, but there are certain people that I do resonate with on a spiritual level.
All right, he was telling me about, I don't know how we got off on the topic of the Great Pyramids. And he had been there twice. He's seen them twice. And I've never seen them. Not face to face.
Not in this lifetime, right?
Have you been before? Have you been to Egypt?
Not in this lifetime. I always say not in this. I want to go, and I really, really need to go. I shouldn't even say I want to go. I feel a strong urge to get out there. I think Brian Forster does the trips, and I have him coming up on my show, August. I'm thinking about seriously going and taking a trip with those guys.
Do you?
If I can muster it up, yeah. And I'm not one for going over there, but what's that?
Is he coming on hyperspace, or is he coming on?
Yeah, I'm going to have him on hyperspace August 4th. He's booked out, and he's going to be going. He tours people. He takes that tour out there, and of course, I just felt a strong resonance to go. I just really feel like I need to be there to experience the transmission of that pyramid. Although,
do you know what date he's going?
I'll send you the information on. I want to say October, and don't quote me on it. I really have to look and double check. But I know he has a lot of different tours. Yeah, and he's phenomenal. I just love his work. I have so much respect for him. So
I would love to get him on the show.
Oh yeah, I can put you in touch with him if you want. He's phenomenal. I start researching his information, and it totally rings true, totally resonates. And the way they describe everything when they're walking through these ancient sites and structures. There's something about it that just speaks to your soul. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what I feel. I know that's what you probably feel as well. There's certain things that it's not even a triggering, it's a remembrance. It's like knowing. It's like you were there before at the cellular level. It's just amazing to me. So, yeah, I think that while we're here on the timeline, Mark, we really need to respect the areas that are so sacred that we're here as markers and reminders of who we really are.
Yeah. Boy, that's so true. I mean, the problem we're facing is that to understand who we are and to understand what's happened on the earth, we have to change our paradigm. And it's very uncomfortable for people to do that.
Yeah,
but these
they're used to it.
Yeah, exactly. These ancient structures, though, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, according to my information, 73,000 years old. And it was built under the direction of extraterrestrials from Orion. And all of the three larger pyramids kind of line up with the three stars on the belt of Orion. It's interesting too because according to my information, all the human beings in our galaxy really come from a root race called the Lyrians. What does it say? Something along the lines of Nocodamian led his people from the depths of the known universe and to the constellation of Lyra Vega, where they populated many worlds. They also conquered some worlds, and they mixed with other people. So they went to the Sirius system. They went to Orion. They went to the Pleiadian system. There was a Lyrian named Asael who settled on Ira in the Pleiadian star system, and he was one of those Ishwishes from Lyra Vega. Now, some of these guys weren't warm and fuzzy, let's put it that way. There is something, you've heard of the Ring Nebula, which is ionized gas from a dying star. The Maya information says there was what they call an Ishwish, a king of wisdom, which evidently blew up a solar system, blew up a star. I don't remember the exact whole story behind it. I don't even know if they explained it all. But they call it, the Ring Nebula, they call it JHWH Mata, or the Eye of God. And when Billy was in the Great Mothership, I think it was Contact 31 or 30, when he was in the Great Mothership, he got to see that a little more close up. But according to the Maya information, in the Lyra Vega system near the Ring Nebula is where humanity first came in to the Milky Way galaxy. And they say there are 7 million solar systems in our galaxy that can support higher life. I think there are currently like 2,600,000 human civilizations, throughout our galaxy in various places. It was really interesting talking to Dr. Sauter too, because he has, through his own independent thought processes, come to the conclusion that on other worlds that there would be people and there would be ecosystems, reasonably similar to ours, assuming that there was water and gravity and that wasn't too harsh, and that he and I think he's very logical to come to that conclusion, because a lot of people don't come to that conclusion.
No, and I always, when I look at water in general, that's a universal thing. I mean, that's an alien life form, if you ask me. So I don't think it's, indigenous to this earth at all in any form, any illusion, not because this planet's been terraformed many times over, as we all know. There's even talk about it once having perhaps a nuclear war of some kind, or prior some form of a nuclear war, maybe before mankind showed up on the map. So literally, yeah, we have space family, we have cosmic family out there, and we're not quote unquote human, as I like to tell everybody. I mean, we're star people encased in the matrix on a timeline. And of course, and I've touched on this, but we're tapped into the false matrix here. People have lied and deceived for centuries, and we've got to get out of it. We've got to shift that dynamic. We can't live in it. It doesn't serve the universe. It doesn't serve us on a spiritual level, on a cosmic level, on a consciousness level. It's actually doing a disservice to not only us, Mark, but to our generations of children, and also the planet and the animals, of course. It's not helping anybody, truly.
Well, the Meyer information says we live in a consciousness-conditioned tyranny, and that there's a dark order that's coming out of our ruling class that's really trying to take control of pretty much everything. Is that what you mean? Yeah,
I do, and I also, it's the false matrix is what I call it, but it's also like a simulation of a program that's not accurate. In other words, it's a holographic design work engineered by these, I don't want to call them high-tech sorcerers. I mean, they're just people who have access to a lot of manipulative technology, which has been inducing a false matrix and almost like a hypnotic state of consciousness for the mass collective for a very long time. So once you get trained in it and conditioned into it, people think that's the norm. Well, it's not the norm. We need to shed that skin. It's an artificial skin. We need to shed it and then actually embrace the star body, the light body, through higher consciousness. And I know you know this, and I know the Billy Meyer material reflects on it on many levels. So that's really what it boils down to, Mark. But, every time we do radio, we're really talking about whether it's Meyer material or not. We're talking about consciousness and what's stopping us from ascending onto the next level. And it's really about the manipulation factor based on what mankind's been doing with data and how he's been, doing this construct of false information.
Well, what Dr. Sauter was saying, which I think is what you were saying too, is that people are kind of like automatons now. They're like functioning like automatically as they go through life. Is that what you were trying to get to?
Yeah, and you're breaking up there for a second, Mark.
Okay. What I was saying was that... Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. It's just that you were breaking up. Go ahead.
Well, Dr. Sauter was saying that we're like... Many people on this planet are like automatons, just functioning automatically.
Yep. No, I agree with you on that one. And I don't know if you can hear me very well or not, but you kept phasing in and out. I was checking to see here on Skype. You look okay on my end. But, yeah, that's exactly what it is. People are on autopilot. But I think a lot of that has to do with there's no spiritual essence that's amping up within their own body that's connecting them to the higher levels of consciousness. I mean, they're just kind of living a false existence.
So I'm breaking up on this side, kind of?
You were just a little bit. You were kind of like phasing out there for a second. Are you getting a storm or wind or something over there?
Oh, yeah, we got some strong winds.
Okay, so that's probably what it is. Yeah.
That could be what it is, definitely.
Okay, you sound all right this second.
Okay. Well, it was just a really interesting conversation with him last night.
Oh, yeah, no, it was a fabulous
Saturday.
show. And, of course, yeah, everybody can access your archives, which I encourage them to do. Your guests are phenomenal. You do wonderful, wonderful work with your interviews.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, sometimes this whole thing takes care of itself. That's all I can say, because it's not like I really plan all this out step by step. Sometimes it just falls into place.
I think that's the best kind of magic is when things just work on a synchronistic level. Just let it all flow. When you start trying to control things too much, usually it backfires, at least in my opinion. I think that's why I always let go of the wheel and let my higher self and the universe kind of help steer, because I'm like, there are times when I just have to let go of the wheel. I can't be constantly trying to be in control of something that's bigger than me sometimes.
Well, I like the way you put that, let go of the wheel.
Mhm.
That takes some courage, doesn't it?
Well, as long as you know who's grabbing the wheel for you, the higher self, oversoul, superconscious, the soul light universe, the great cosmic mind, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, not to delegate it to an entity or disembodied spirit or something else worse, but you know what I mean. But sometimes we really, sometimes people can get really cerebral. I know I can, and I have to back myself out and just look at things from a higher perspective. Otherwise, we get caught up in the maelstrom of this craziness that's going on across the world.
Yeah, and I was also reading in the Might of the Thoughts here, too, where it's very important for us not to become pessimistic.
Right, yeah.
Let me read this one little passage here. It says, thus a purely negatively thinking human being can become a grouch or a murderer or a despot and so forth, while a purely positive thinking human being is no longer able to recognize the difference between good and bad and only sees everything through rose-colored glasses. So that's probably why he always talks about being neutral positive.
Right, yeah, you can't escape into a little bubble and bury your head, but you can't get wrapped up into the drama too much where it's not productive either, yeah. So neutral energy, yeah. Neutral positive, as you were saying, yeah. I
agree. I very, very much agree. You know, there's a lot here. I probably talk about Billy Meyer's stuff way too much.
No, you don't. No, I think I love listening to it, and I'm sure your listeners do as well. That's the whole idea, is to touch on the Billy Meyer material. So yeah, he has a lot of good information in there. It's productive, it's infinite, and it's also timeless. So there's so much data in there that you can use to apply in your everyday practices in your everyday life.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll, if I stick with it, maybe I can learn German well enough to start reading some of the other stuff that hasn't been translated yet.
Well, that'd be nice. Yeah, I thought you were working on that.
Well, I am, but things get in the way, and then I kind of go back and do this for a while and then do that, and that sort of thing. It's sometimes a test of time management.
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever noticed that.
Well, time is a benchmark of measure, and I try to work out of time. But, yeah, I totally understand. I'm supposed to be wrapping up my sci-fi, and I've actually come up with the ending. So, finally, I just need to get it all compiled now.
You're doing a book.
Yeah, I was writing my sci-fi years ago, and I took breaks, and I got busy, and now I'm finishing it up, and it has a really nice ending to it. So, yeah, and that's a parallel from what happened to me in 2004 to some degree, the technology and the events in this book. It's masked as a sci-fi, but it really is more than that.
Do you self-publish?
Yeah, I self-publish because I don't like people censoring my work, and that's why I started self-publishing my own material. So, yeah, and still plugging along as a writer and author.
When you self-publish, do you make copies and stuff too?
No, I just basically, I was using Author House as my publisher, so that's a self-publishing company. So all you do is send them the file, and they go ahead, and you have to have it all edited yourself, of course, but you'll just send it over there, and if you have your own creative artwork, then you can present that as well, and they compile everything, and it's print on demand, so it's pretty easy. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
So you are printing on demand then? You can print one as it's needed?
That's the way they set it up. Yeah, supposedly that's what's going on, so... Kind of nice.
Oh, that's excellent. So you don't have to print 100 or 1,000 or
right.
10,000.
No, so I'm not stuck with a bunch of books and all that good stuff. But what's really interesting is it seems like regular bookstores are kind of fading away and they're becoming obsolete, which is a shame. When you go around to regular stores, everything is online now. Everybody wants to read everything online, and of course, I still like my hard copies. I still like physical books.
I do too. And the Meyer information says it's better to read this stuff in a physical form. Something about our perception and, again, not being around the too positive of energy that comes off of these electronic devices. And when I started printing off the Meyer contact notes and reading them, I was absorbing more.
Mhm. Yep.
I think there's a strain, an eye strain, and other kind of strain associated with just staring at the screen too much.
Right. Well, the eyes are the windows to the soul. And if you're actually constantly staring at an artificial computer, which is really an artificial intelligence to some degree, you're literally getting pulled into the virtual space to some degree. Your spirit and your soul is, not that you're getting trapped, but it is a derailment. In my opinion, and I agree that I notice energetically a huge difference between reading by myself away from the computer that's powered off and reading online. I don't like to read online, although I do it a lot.
Yeah, I do it. I do it a lot more than I'd like to too, but I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I have my highlighters and all that good stuff, so I can highlight.
I do
cool
too.
parts
Do you have highlighters and you go and highlight? I do too.
Oh, I love to highlight. People hate me if they ever get my books because I'm like, what did she do? She's highlighted everything, but that's what I do because I like important chapters or important pieces of information. I do highlight. Yeah.
And then when you go back through it, you can go hit the highlights quickly. Boom, boom,
Absolutely.
boom.
Yeah, but good reference manual. That's the whole idea. Books are so magical, and that's why when you look and see what's happened in the past, notice how there's really not that much insofar as an accessible archive of information based on the history of the true history of what's happened here on this world. So it's usually left in the format of frequency and energy and consciousness, but not in a physical document for the most part.
Do you do your own editing, or do you have an editor that helps you?
No, I do my own editing, and that's hard sometimes because when I do, I'll skip over a typo 3 or 4 times before I figure out that I've done something wrong.
Right.
But I still do it. I edit myself. They don't edit at self-publishing companies usually.
Do you give them the file like in Microsoft Word?
Oh, I just give it to them like on a stick, just like WordPerfect, just like that, and just send it over, and they get it, and they just do their thing, do their magic, and ready to go. It's not real complicated. And of course, I've touched on Create Space before because everybody, people seem to like that Create Space. I have not used it, but I'm thinking about putting my sci-fi out on it. It's createspace.com, createspace.com.
Not familiar with that at all.
Yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. I have a few people that like that, and they've told me that I should probably try using it. So
you can put books out there and stuff?
Yeah, it's just as simple. It's on print on demand. I think Betsy Lewis actually has, if I'm not mistaken. I think she's doing it too. So I've been using Author House. Betsy Lewis, she's been on your show too. Really?
Betsy's doing that, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she did. If I'm not mistaken, I think she has a few books out there on that. So
she writes books so fast I can't keep up with her.
She's so cute. Yeah, she's one of my favorites too to interview. But yeah, she cranks them out. I'm just so busy. I don't have time and the illusion to sit there all day and crank out material. And a lot of it's on we do the radio shows, and I think that takes a lot of energy, to be honest.
So when is your book going to be available? Where I could buy a copy and read?
Oh, I hate to give timelines. Let's see. What month are we in? We're in May. Let's shoot for the end of July. I'll be out before then. If I can just get it all looked at, edited, then I'll be ready to go because I have the ending now. So I was kind of trying to figure out how I wanted to end it, and it took me a while. So.
And it is somewhat based on your own life history?
Well, it's based on the induction I went through in 2004 with the artificial intelligence and the artificial telepathy. And what happened was I started writing a sci-fi paralleling the technology and how it affects somebody on an alternate timeline and alternate reality. In other words, we're multidimensional beings. So what happened to me on this timeline is one thing. What happens to me on a multidimensional scale through the interface of the technology is another. So what this book is about is a spin-off of that. And people will see that a couple years down the road, they're probably going to look at this book and say, wow, everything she's talking about and writing about is actually in fruition right now. So it's kind of a foreboding book like 1984, but not like 1984, but you know what I mean. It has that energy to it that actually is prophetic insofar as what's coming down the pike.
They're not harassing you electronically or anything like that anymore, are they?
Well, I have the technology built into me. It's been provable and it's measured, and I have anomalous signals that have been with me since 2004, which means I'm kind of a hybrid. So that means that I can be accessed, but they can't control me. In other words, they can just make me maybe sick or something or not feel right. But no, I mean, for the most part, I'm me. I just have some anomalous signals that are measurable in my energetic field and in my neural circuits. So
now,
it's sci-fi.
You weren't they didn't put a physical implant in you, did they?
It's a signal anomaly is what it is. It's measurable, yeah. It's a different kind of signal. It's not a chip. It's a signal interface with AI. But it's literally, I've had it since 2004. I think you have my documentary. It shows
wasn't the one fellow in your documentary, he was moving an electronic device over part of your body, and it was like beeping, like it was detecting
right,
something?
Yeah, no, he was finding all the signals, and the implants. You can call them whatever you want to call them, but the bottom line is I'm wired for the technology, and it is based on a signal anomaly, which has been with me since 2004. So that's why I put the documentary. I want people to know what was going on. That's not normal. That's not part of me. After the induction, a lot of stuff changed, Mark, and that's why we talked about the transhumanism stuff, because I understand the dark side of technology and what they try to do with it. So.
Wasn't it interesting, Dr. Souder talking about he called it the machine.
Yeah, well, I call it the electronic god, because what the transhumanism is doing, the transhumanist agenda, is really about electronic god. It's about diverting your soul energy into this false encasement of this matrix that's based on a technology based on man, not based on a set of machine consciousness or a symbiotic relationship with the universe. This is mankind's design. It's a Frankenstein. That's why I always keep people away from it. I'm like, you guys really don't want to be part of that, because it's not part of the cosmos. It's not part of ascended machine technology. It's not part of the off-world star people's technology. It's man's reverse engineered crap, and we just don't need that. So,
I have a clip on transhumanism. You want to listen real quick? It's
oh, sure, yeah.
It's kind of interesting. Let's go. It's quiet here in the beginning. Hopefully it'll start. I mean, it says it started.
You know, when I became president in January of 1993, back in the dark ages, the average cell phone weighed 5 pounds. And there were 50 sites on the entire World Wide Web. 50. There have been more added than that since I've been talking.
God made man in his own image. God intended for man to become one with God. We are going to become one with God. Cloning and the reprogramming of DNA is the first serious step in becoming one with God.
This issue is going to dominate our global politics. This is the issue that will color the century as we merge with machines. And I think it's inevitable that we will. We will transform into something new.
Evolution is a spiritual process that moves us closer to the ideal of God. I mean, what is God? God is described as being unlimited in intelligence, creativity.
You know, I have no desire to merge with a machine. What about you?
Well, I've been there. I've been merged with the artificial intelligence and the artificial telepathy, so I can tell you, yeah, it's not pleasant at all, and it definitely negates one from their spiritual design work. It's very creepy listening to that, because these guys really think they're all that, a bag of chips in a Snickers bar. They really think that they're the version of God, when in fact it's man creates God in his own image with the technology that they're trying to misuse. If they think that transhumanism has anything to do with infinite consciousness or the full light source energy, they are very, very sadly mistaken. It has no connection. No connection, and it's not immortality. So they're entrapping themselves, Mark. They're going to preserve themselves in this dead box of artificial intelligence created by them that they're going to call God, when in fact it's nothing. It's just a box of entrapment. I feel sorry for them. They're very stupid, to be honest.
You called it the electronic God, didn't you?
Yeah, because it's manufactured by man. It's not connected to the full light spectrum and full light universe. It has no consciousness to it. And even if they try to interpolate and take brain templates from people who do have consciousness and spirit and soul, that's not the same thing. That's a replication. So they're simulating life. It's their version of life. It's their version of consciousness. It's their version of a creator. Well, their version is very, very defective. It's not anything connected to source. So once again, and they're going full speed ahead with it. There's no doubt about it. And they're arrogant.
The Meyer information talks about the rise of the robotic people, and that eventually people will purposely have their arms and legs removed so they can interface directly with these machines through their nervous system. That sounds like insanity. Well,
it's unfortunate that the communication system that they have in their creation is actually compatible with our supercomputer brains. It is because we are supercomputer designs. We are actually, what they're doing is trying to replicate us and create an AI to mirror that. So I do see that happen. And of course, I can see where people are in wheelchairs and they need help and assistance with walking. And I think there's a good side to technology, but I don't think that's what they're doing with it. And I think people want to be superhuman. They want to be well, we have avatar abilities. I mean, if we advance ourselves on a multidimensional level with telepathy and telekinesis, we can do all these things naturally. We don't need their version. You know, you have a light body, you have Merkaba, you have all these beautiful designs as a multidimensional spiritual being, but they're trying to negate that. And once you get trapped in that black box technology, I'm telling you, there's no way your soul can breathe, and there's no way you can merge with the full light universe that you're supposed to be merged with. I think it's a very negative, bad thing, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. The transhumanist movement is not a positive thing at all, and
no.
It has nothing to do with the universal consciousness.
No, there's no connection to spirit. Well, I think man is really desperate to be a god, Mark. I mean, we are gods as a higher self oversoul superconscious design. We are gods. So, and now I'm not saying that in arrogance. I'm just saying the higher self oversoul is an ascended master consciousness. But these guys really want to be the creator. They want to entrap everybody else and use artificial intelligence interface to everybody, so they're programmed with thoughts, so you can't think or hear or speak for yourself. You're being inducted into a program that's basically controlling and manipulating everything you're doing. Do people realize this, that once you get interfaced with a neural artificial intelligence program, you are losing your state of mind, the state of being?
You know, I don't know if you remember that. I think Dr. Snider said he moved to Ecuador.
Yeah.
To get out of the country.
Right, yeah. So I guess, I don't know if he was being harassed or what was his story behind that. That was my dog, sorry.
I think there is a big story behind that. I don't remember all the details. But hopefully next time I have him back on, he can get into that a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds like he was having some problems, yeah.
He's totally clued into this. He calls it the machine, which I thought was fascinating. Let me, I got another clip here.
Okay,
go ahead.
Good. No, I was just going to say he's spot on. He's spot on about the machines because that's where I've been, with the artificial intelligence program.
Yeah. Here we go. This is going to be another transhumanism clip.
All right, let's get into the big report. And I've already been leading up to this here, so this whole, the last 20 minutes really just integrates some of this information. United Nations envisions transhumanist future where man is obsolete. And that's Aaron Dyke's article at Infowars.com. The Globalist Future 2045 International Congress, led by iconic futurist Ray Kurzweil, who says he wants world government, and held in Moscow a few months back, lays out stark vision of a future for neo-human where AI, cybernetics, nanotech, and other emerging technologies replace mankind, and openly transhumanist visions now being steered by the elite, but which emerge.
Isn't that crazy? They're talking about replacing mankind. Literally.
Well, you know what's interesting? You mentioned, or he mentioned Ray, that guy who's big on.
Ray Kurzweil.
I was wondering, has he been interfaced with the artificial intelligence? Does he actually know what it's like? Because I do. Does he understand what the artificial telepathy is?
I bet he hasn't.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, because I'll tell you what, as a test pilot for the technology, and obviously if your listeners don't know, you can access my books on Amazon.com, but literally, if he doesn't understand what this thing is capable of, then he really needs to get a clue and start interfacing with it and tell me how he feels about it once he does. Because I'll tell you point blank, once you start getting entangled with that program, that is a self-destruct. There's no way it's going to benefit mankind. It will make them feel like they're being benefited.
Is it miserable?
Well, it's miserable because you have artificial intelligence, you've got a dialogue, manufactured, you have visuals, forced visuals, you have psychotronics involved, then you have live handlers, real time. People trying to control and manipulate you. I touched on this the other day, that targeted individuals are actually a branch of some of the electronic warfare and the electromagnetic warfare that's part of the transhumanism program, because if they can't get you to turn, if they can't get you to comply with what they want, then they'll harass you. That's the whole idea. If they can't control your brain and mind, the next step is harassment, passive harassment, and using technology to do it. So you see where it's heading. And like I said, a lot of these guys who brag about it, man, if they haven't been involved in it and they don't understand how to interface with the technology, they really have no voice as far as I'm concerned. And I do have a voice because I know the technology very well, And I'll tell you, and I always warn people, it is no good. This is something that is a soul eater. It wants your spirit, it wants your soul, it wants your essence, it wants to take the beautiful, beautiful design that you were given as a star being and contaminate it with man's version of God. It's horrific.
Yes, horrific. Very well said. You know, Solaris, we need to pick back up with this topic on another show, because I don't think we've done enough with transhumanism. And we've gone over time already. I appreciate you coming on. It's been just a lot of fun.
Oh, I love being on. And, of course, Mark, you're wonderful. So thanks for having me join you tonight. It's been great.
My pleasure. Folks, you're listening to Ohio Exopolitics. We've been talking with Solaris BlueRaven, talking a little bit about the Maya material as well as transhumanism, which is also talked about in the Maya material. Look up Solaris BlueRaven online. She's got a couple radio shows and a whole bunch of books out. Anyway, thanks, folks, and have a good evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark.